You were on like the 52nd floor of a building when the earthquake happened?
I was on the 15th floor of a 52-story
15th.
building, and
Okay.
like I said, it was a 9.0. Look, I've been in California for
Yeah.
last part of my career, and before that, and I'd felt some earthquakes before, and when the earthquake happened, when it started happening, like, oh, this crazy an earthquake, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like 30 seconds, a minute and a half, and again 9.0. The building was like literally going
Yeah.
like this. It was nuts.
Welcome to Sports Business Unplugged, where the real game happens off the field. No fluff, no filters, just raw, uncut stories from the pros shaping the industry. Their journeys, their challenges, their passion, straight from the source. Let's talk sports business.
What's up, guys? I'm Andrew Sachs. Welcome back to Sports Business Unplugged, the show where we go beyond the scoreboard to reveal the real, raw, and unfiltered stories behind the sports industry. Today, we've got an absolutely fascinating guest joining us. Imagine a journey that starts at Yale University quarterback and ends up with title of CEO. Our guest today lived it. He's an 11-year NFL vet who blocked for a Hall of Fame running backs, a guy who went from catching passes to catching business deals. After he hung up his cleats, didn't slow down one bit. He got his MBA, traded on Wall Street, and ran a pro basketball team in Japan. He also launched not one but multiple companies. He's been a fullback, he's been a founder, and now a CEO leading an iconic sports brand. You've probably had one of their wall decals on your bedroom wall at some point. His name is Chris Hetherington, and his story truly embodies what this podcast is about. In this episode, we're diving into his incredible journey from his grind to the NFL locker room to the grind to the boardroom, from uncovering injuries to overcoming the loss of his home in a wildfire. We'll hear how his Ivy League psychology major found his way into the NFL trenches, what it took to reinvent himself in business, and why he is so passionate about wellness and mindset. Chris is going to share lessons that he's learned about his resilience, his leadership, and reinventing yourself at every turn. If you're ever looking for inspiration on making a bold career move or insight on how athletes transition their success off the field, this one is for you. We're going to talk about how Chris has built a second act that's arguably even more impressive than his first, from founding Peels, which was a company turning orange peels into CBD wellness products, to spearheading a new fan experience as the CEO of Fathead. And trust me, Chris does not hold back. He's as unplugged as they come, and he has honest takes on the highs and lows behind the scenes. So get ready for some serious wisdom, few jaw-dropping stories. Ever wonder what it's like to be on a 52-story building, 15th floor, and a massive 9.0 earthquake happens? He's got that. Let's jump right in. Here's my conversation with Chris Hetherington. Chris, how are you doing today?
Great, man. Good to be here, Andrew. Pleasure to meet you, and looking forward to diving in, man. Telling some stories.
I'm super excited. So let's just get right into it. So obviously, Yale, you were a two-sport athlete, baseball and football, but not a lot of people know you played quarterback at Yale and transitioned to a fullback in the NFL. Can you just talk a little bit about how transitioning from what people would say is the man quarterback of Yale, and then going into a fullback in the NFL, kind of like going down to like the nitty gritty work in the pros. How did that shifting positions affect you mentally and your teamwork and all that?
Yeah, it's a crazy story, man. I went to Yale at the time in the Ivy League. Freshmen weren't eligible to play varsity, so I came in as a running back and defensive back, and they recruited about 8 quarterbacks that year. So we had 90 guys on campus playing freshman football. And so what happened is the varsity coach and the freshman coach were watching me throw the ball one day and said, "Hey, have you ever played quarterback?" And I said, "Never played quarterback in my life." They said, "Show up a half hour early before practice tomorrow. I got an idea." And so, long story short, they moved like 6 other quarterbacks at different positions. And I became the freshman starting quarterback in the freshman team. And so, my freshman year, we were pretty much, pro style offense. My sophomore year, we ran a little bit of triple option and a little bit of drop back. And then my junior and senior year, we ran double option and drop back. And so it was great, man. My football IQ had improved pretty significantly. watching film as a quarterback, which I think helped my transition to the NFL. Just the overall football IQ, knowing what everybody's assignments are on offense, being able to read defenses, coverages, fronts, et cetera. And so, when I when I was coming out, I was an undrafted free agent out of Yale. The chips were obviously stacked against me, and luckily I was a good athlete that could have played a couple different positions. So I ended up signing with Cincinnati my rookie year, and they made me a fullback. And look, I would have played anything they asked me to play. And so I was on the practice squad for the first 7 weeks of the season, and fortunately got picked up by Indianapolis. Their starting fullback got hurt, so ended up coming in as a special teams demon. I mean, I knew early on, and was lucky enough to learn from older veterans that look, you gotta the more you can do is the saying in the NFL, and so I made a living on special teams the first 3 years, and it's kind of that kamikaze running down and kickoff and blowing up wedges, and being in the wedge, getting blown up on kickoff return,
Yeah.
and so I think the story is you got to be able to adapt, and for me it was all about what do I have to do to make this team, what do I have to do to become the best pro I can be, and be a valuable asset to the organization. And I was lucky enough to grind it out for 11 years, and went to Carolina my third through the sixth year, and played a lot of offense. We ran a fullback friendly West Coast offense, and then went to Cincinnati and or excuse me, St. Louis, and started at fullback, and then went to the Raiders for 2 years, and ended my career at the Niners for the last 2 years. But it was
Yeah.
tell you, man, it was a grind. I
Yeah.
every day I had a chip on my shoulder, and felt as though my job was on the line, because it was. And so I did everything I could to improve mentally and physically. And like I said, always improving my football IQ, always treating every rep in the weight room like my job depended on it, because it did. And so those lessons I learned, grit and resilience, and overcoming adversity, overcoming injuries, playing hurt. I played hurt a lot. And you're never 100% healthy in the NFL. And so I think that really helped my transition to the business world, and building teams, building cultures, and it's been fun, man.
I'm just curious. I know you've played in Indianapolis with the Panthers, Rams, Raiders, 49ers. Which did you prefer playing on the East Coast or the West Coast?
Man, I would have played anywhere. I think I really enjoyed my time at every organization. I think, when I was a younger player in Indianapolis, Jim Harbaugh was our quarterback my rookie year, and we had a really good team. We lost in the playoffs to Pittsburgh, and then my third year in Indianapolis was Peyton Manning. Um, Indianapolis has certainly changed, both as an organization, as a city. Carolina was probably the most productive time in my career, and probably the most fun. I had my own radio show, and my pictures were on some of the billboards. And like I said, we ran a very fullback friendly West Coast offense, and still played all four special teams. Um, this was the time when it was the greatest show on turf era in St. Louis. We had a lot of great weapons. We had some adversity that year. Kurt Warner got hurt that year. Raiders, we had a ton of talent. We had, Jerry Rice, Tim Brown, Charles Woodson, Rod Woodson, Warren Sapp. We had a great, great group. It's just, which I'm sure we'll get into. I think the culture of the organization really affected, our performance on the field. And then went to San Fran, and we drafted Alex Smith, who ended up having a great career. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, Andrew, I really was very blessed and fortunate enough to play for a long time. The
Mm-hmm.
average career, as you know, is about 3 years in the
Yep.
NFL, and I just always had a chip on my shoulder, man. Would have done anything they asked me to do. I
Yep.
exploring being a long snapper, like it's like whatever I got to do to survive, man, to stay on this team, and stay in the league. I'm willing to do.
You mentioned the average time in the league being 3 years. You played 11, so pretty good for any player, left, let alone like being an undrafted Ivy Leaguer.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? What do you think are some of the highs and lows of that journey? Was there a moment where you felt, "Oh yeah, I belong in this league," and conversely, was there a moment where you almost walked away?
Yeah, I never thought about walking away. I think for
Hmm.
me, look, coming from an Ivy League school, like I said, the chips were against me, and I had to prove myself every day. And I think, you mentioned earlier going from a quarterback and having the ball in your hands, and
Yeah.
getting girls and stuff like that is a different situation. But I think for me,
Yeah.
it was like, look, I gotta establish an identity very early on, established an identity of being a tough guy and playing really physical and playing through injuries and being accountable to my teammates and my coaches and so I think that's basically my career in summary was like I did whatever it took to always improve physically and mentally every day. No matter whether I went out and had fun at night, I was always in the training room the next day and getting IVs and sweating it
Yep.
out,
Yep.
working out and grinding and studying film. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. It's like
Hmm.
first one in the building and the last one to leave, man. And for a guy like me and you know how I came in the league and they're always trying to replace me with younger, less expensive guys every year and look, it was a grind. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a grind, but I loved every minute of it. I wouldn't when I look back, I wouldn't change a thing. I've learned a lot. I've lost more games than I won in the NFL, which was at the time very tough, but those are the lessons you learn from. You learn from failures. You learn from failures in business and sports, and I'm a big fan of stoicism, and my kind of mantra is worry about the stuff you can control, and don't stress about the stuff you can't control, and that's really how I try to live my life.
Do you think that do you think that the culture of the NFL has changed since you've been there? Like, is a player more easily replaceable today than when you were in the league?
I think the game has changed in a lot of ways. I think special teams are somewhat minimized. I think, they're doing a better job of protecting players. I mean, there was no concussion protocol when I played. In my 11 years, I got asked two questions: how many fingers do I have up, and what day of the week is it? And I think the rules have changed for the better in that they're trying to protect players and concussions. It's a very pass heavy league, I think. The league has certainly got more sophisticated. I mean, back in the day we had, printouts of defenses on the sideline. Now they got iPads and it's just
Hmm.
with technology, everything advances. But I think the game is such a great game. I'm very grateful for my time in the NFL. I'm a big fan of football. I enjoy watching it today. I think, some people get bummed out with the rule changes with kickoff and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that surprised me, like fullback's a dying breed now, right? You don't see too many fullbacks. And in my opinion, if you look at the league and who's had success, or at least over the last decade, the New Englands of the world and Baltimore's and San Fran's and Kansas City, they use a fullback and, for often. And so it's such a copycat league. And now it's spreading everything out and running two tight ends a lot and one back in the backfield. The running game, we know over the last couple of years, the value of the fullback's been minimized. And now all of a sudden Saquon Barkley comes out
Yep.
and has an epic year. And now all of a sudden the fullback's, back in the spotlight. And so, yeah, I think the rule changes have certainly changed the game. I think technology has certainly changed the game, but it's still a great game, man. It's the
Hmm.
ultimate team sport. It's
Hmm.
such a physical game, and you hear this all the time, and it's true. Like guys are getting bigger and stronger and faster
Yeah.
every year. And I came
Yep.
in the league, man. I was 235 my rookie year, and I'm trying to block Bruce Smith and Reggie White coming off the edge. They're men, and I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like a kid, and but you just adapt, man, and you got to adapt to the speed of the game, especially coming from the Ivy League. It was just a whole different level of speed, and I tried to prove myself very early on of, like I said, being a tough guy and playing hurt and being a smart player and being accountable, and I think that's what really I was enabled me to survive so long.
And you mentioned how important adaptability is and learning how to pivot. So I feel that definitely resonates to what my next point is I feel like many athletes after they get out of the league, they struggle with what's next after retirement. And you did some things. You went to Harvard Business School. What drove you back to the classroom after the NFL? Because that's obviously not a common theme amongst NFL players. Might be becoming more common now. How did that MBA style education change your approach to life and business? And would you recommend other athletes invest in further education like what you did?
Yeah, I think early on I was smart enough to realize that I wasn't going to play forever. Um, again, the average career is 3 years, and I learned from the older players that you got to prepare for life after football. And Some guys do a good job of that, and some guys don't. And everybody thinks they're going to play forever. Everybody thinks they're going to play 10 years, and that's just not a reality. And so, I was lucky enough to have a good education. I went to Yale, and towards the end of my career, I did the executive programs at Harvard and Wharton. And, look, the transition from being a pro athlete to the real world is very difficult. I don't care how many years you played or how much money you made or how big of a star you were or not. Like, it's very hard. That transition's tough. And, I think for me, it's like, all right, let me rely on my education. Let me try to meet as many people as I can possibly meet. Let me learn as much as I possibly can learn and figure out what my next passion is, and what I can pour my heart and soul and my diligence and my commitment and energy and attitude in. And so, I was fortunate enough to find what I consider my next locker room. I joined a hedge fund in 2008 called Evolution Capital, and it was a good cultural fit for me. It was a lot of ex-Ivy League athletes that were kind of work hard and play hard. And, I dove in, man. I tried to learn as much as I could. I mean, I didn't even know what an option was when I joined the hedge fund in 2008. And then granted, the world was going crazy in 2008. I
Yep.
thought the world was going to zero. And so,
Yeah.
I same mentality, first one in and last one to leave, and studying my trades at night, figuring out how I can get better, looking at the European markets at night. And look, I had a lot of different roles in that hedge fund in 11 years. Was a trader. We bought a professional basketball team in Tokyo, so I became the president and CEO of the basketball team. I
Yep.
hadn't played basketball since eighth grade, but it's like, our kind of thesis was to take the NBA style of basketball entertainment and bring it to Tokyo and leverage our big banking relationships over there. And it was a really, really special time in my life. And unfortunately, we were about 80% way through our season, and that big earthquake and tsunami happened. It was the biggest earthquake in history, a 9.0, and it lasted like several minutes. And so that was a pretty traumatic event. And we were trying to buy the league and it didn't work out. And so I came back and worked for the hedge fund, had a bunch of different roles there for the remaining years I was there. And then, went the entrepreneur route in 2020. And then, like we talked about, I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time to be in the position to buy this iconic brand with some partners and fellow athletes, and big opportunity. We got big growth plans, and for me, man, it's fun to be back in sports again. It's fun to
Yep.
leverage these relationships I've built over the last 25 years, and we have an incredible brand, an incredible opportunity, and now it's all about putting the right people in the right seats and really focus on our growth plan and grow strategically and grow profitably, and that's really what I'm focused on today.
If I'm not mistaken, you were on like the 52nd floor of a building when the earthquake happened.
I was on the 15th floor of a 52-story
15th.
building, and
Okay.
like I said, it was a 9.0. And look, I've been in California for
Yeah.
the last part of my career, and before that, and I'd felt some earthquakes before, and when the earthquake happened, and when it started happening, like, oh, it's crazy, an earthquake, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like 30 seconds, a minute and a half, and again 9.0, the building was like literally going
Yeah.
like this. It was nuts. And so, the announcements are going off in Japanese. I have
Uh,
no idea what they're saying. And, I was responsible for like 60 people underneath the desk screaming. And so what happened was, it lasted several minutes, and then it stopped. And so everybody was scurrying down, the elevators were shut down, everybody was scurrying down the stairway. So I stand up and I'm like, look, I had done some research. Luckily, the building's fine. The building's not going to fall down. Let's hang tight for 20 minutes. Let's everybody go down the stairs and we'll go out. And so we went out, and we were in the financial buildings, and a couple thousand people out there. And
yeah.
again, if this is in New York or LA, like, people would be looting. Like, these people are so
Yeah.
disciplined, man. Everybody's like lining up in single file lines. It was fascinating. And so we were outside for about 2 hours, and then they cleared us to go back in, back to work. And about 30 minutes later, it was another 7.0.
Oh my God.
And that was it. I was like on the phone with the US Embassy trying to get information, and, my parents calling me. It was chaotic.
You said you hadn't played basketball since the eighth grade. So how did the opportunity to do that even come about? And can you just talk a little bit about how at that time just you landing in Tokyo as an American CEO, what were the
Yeah.
challenges?
Well, the story is Michael Lurch, who's a dear friend of mine. He was, the founder of this hedge fund. And so we did a big structure finance deal, and the borrower couldn't pay us back. And so we inherited some of his assets, one of which was a professional basketball team. And so, um, of anybody in the organization, I guess I'm the one with professional sports
Yeah.
experience. So, look, it's like everything else. You gotta develop a playbook, and the playbook is to, build this franchise, get the right people in the right seats, and focus on operations, sales, marketing. And look, it was tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was, we were in Tokyo. We were an Asia-based hedge fund. We had offices in Tokyo. We had a lot of relationships there on the banking side. But from a cultural standpoint, basketball just wasn't as big as baseball and sumo and other sports, rugby. And so for us, the challenge was really trying to convince people of the value of basketball and entertainment, right? We hired
Hmm.
a guy that was running operations, game operations for the Clippers, and we had 9 American former NBA cheerleaders, and so we had like boy bands playing at halftime and girl bands, and they were like swearing in English. They had no idea what they were saying, and I was going nuts. But it's putting together a playbook and a business plan, and again, it's all focused on marketing and sales, and then it's just putting the best product in the field. Connor New, who was a Princeton basketball player and teammate of mine at the hedge fund. He was the GM and I was the president and CEO, and it was an awesome experience, man. One of the before the earthquake, one of the best experiences of my life, being in Tokyo. And I was I think 34 at the time, maybe 35, and single and no kids, and it was just an amazing experience and a big a learning lesson of how to dive into business. And look, sports are incredible. The business side, we're seeing what's happening right now with these valuations of professional sports teams, and with Fathead in particular, the fandom has never been bigger, right? So we have a great opportunity to be the leader in this, fan experience, to be a fan experience platform and bring joy to people's lives and bring fans closer to their
Yeah.
athletes they love or their heroes they love, etc. So, yeah, overall, just a wonderful experience other than the earthquake, and a
Yeah.
big learning lesson for sure.
Can you just speak a little bit on how actually living in Tokyo is versus living in the US, especially as a, not a Tokyo citizen?
Well, at the time, this is 2010, approaching 2011, and it's different now. I can't remember the last time I was back, 4 or
Yeah.
5 years ago, but
Yeah.
I mean, nothing was in English. And so,
Mm.
first day I got there, I'm like, oh, I can hop on the subway and navigate myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is impossible. So I hired a full-time assistant and translator, and she basically, was my seeing eye person, and translated all my meetings and got me around town. But I think now it's a lot more call it English friendly.
Mm.
Ubers are in English. Back in the day, I had to have the person at the lobby write out the directions or where I was going and hand it to the cab driver who had these like white gloves on. And Tokyo is an amazing place, man. It's a really clean, safe city. One of the craziest stories is I'm on the subway, and you're seeing like 6 and 7-year-old girls in their school uniforms
Yeah.
riding the subway by themselves, and like it wasn't even a thought, whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
would never see that in LA or New York.
No,
and,
no.
and
No way.
you can eat off the subway floors. It is an amazing culture, and an amazing place, and I'm very grateful for my time there. And it was cool, man.
You mentioned obviously the earthquake that it was not a good thing that happened, and then adding on to that a little bit, you recently experienced. You said in one of your recent LinkedIn posts, you said the hardest hit I ever took was not on a football field. Obviously, referring to the fires that just happened. How did that event change you as a person and a leader? And in the aftermath, obviously you changed pain and turned it into purpose by rallying the Fathead wildfire relief. Can you just walk me through your mindset in those moments from how shocked you were? You never thought your house would be burned down to the recovery and how to decide to help other people?
Yeah, it was a traumatic event, Andrew. I mean, my wife and I were home at the time. I was on a Zoom call, and my wife walked into my office and said, "Hey, there's a pretty big fire outside. You should come outside." And so, the first thing we did, luckily our kids were in school about 2 blocks away. And so we saw the fire and how large it was and potentially how dangerous it was. So we ran up to the school and got our kids out of school and sent them with the nanny to the nanny's house. And we're sitting there. We had no warning. And we're seeing how powerful it is and didn't have time to really, I mean, at the end of the day, man, I didn't think my house was going to burn down. Like
Yeah.
I've been part of fires. I'm like, oh, they're going to contain it. And, literally the only thing I grabbed out of the house was my son's baseball stuff because I knew he would be very upset if he didn't have his baseball stuff. I grabbed like these 7 rings that he wanted in his travel ball baseball or all-star baseball. My wife grabbed some of her jewelry. And so we evacuated to a close friend of ours, Scott Kahn, and his wife's house with their kids. And then we got evacuated from there. That was in Laurel Canyon. So we went to San Diego. And it was tough, man. I think we found out we lost our house the next day, and it was just a surreal experience, and nothing that I've ever been through. It's when you lose everything, and not only just material things, but things you can't replace, right? You see my LinkedIn post, just like my kids' stuff, their
Yeah.
Christmas ornaments and their
Yep.
pictures and nice letters that we wrote to the kids or the kids wrote to us and
Hmm.
just special things you can't replace. 11 years of NFL memories, all my memorabilia, all my game worn helmets, game worn jerseys, awards I got gone,
Hmm.
and so
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, my wife and I we're like, look, we got to make good short-term decisions here. We need to figure out where we're going to relocate and create some sense of normalcy for our kids. And I think we did a really good job of that. My wife is an extremely strong person and I a great partner in that situation. And so we made the decision to relocate down to Newport Beach, Corona Del Mar, get the kids back in school in a good community and get them back in sports. But it definitely puts things in perspective. And I think, my role, my wife's role as a parent is to really use this as a teaching lesson for our kids. And the lesson is we still have each other, and that's the most important thing. We're safe, we're healthy, we can replace, a lot of those material things, but the most important thing is we have each other. And so we kind of broke it up into 2 parts. One is, like I said, making a good short-term decision, and that's like, okay, what are we going to do long term here? Are we going to stay in California? Are we going to try to go back to LA? Are we going to try to go back to the Palisades one day? We're not there yet with that decision-making process, but overall, it was, it's a lot of loss and a lot of devastation. I think for me, as a parent and as a man of the household, I gotta stay strong for my wife and stay strong for my and kids.
Hmm.
I think collectively we did a good job of that. But it's tough, man. We have days where my 10-year-old still gets sad and misses the Pacific Palisades. He misses his friends. He misses playing sports there. His school burned down, our church burned down. And so like I said, it just puts things into perspective and you realize what's most important in life. And I think for me personally, I use that as an opportunity to do good and participate in these relief efforts and partner with 211 LA and the Lakers and Rams and Chargers and try to bring a little bit of joy to people that and kids that lost a lot and have been through a lot. And I thought it was the right move to do. And we're having a lot of fun doing it.
That's awesome that you were being able to turn something like that into to a positive, even though there not a lot of positives come out of something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But transitioning just to something a little bit more positive, um, after football, you launched ventures in so many different areas. You launched like a high tech wellness center. You launched a CBD company, and now you're obviously Fathead, leading iconic sports brand. What attracted you to such varied businesses? Do you see a common thread in these businesses, or how do you decide when it's time to jump into a new project or a new industry, or do you just get put into it?
I think in some cases I got put into it.
Yeah.
Resilience Code, we made an investment as a fund and I became the CEO. I had a 17-month, 18-month assignment there and it was crazy, man. I was commuting every week for 17 months, leaving LA every Sunday night and coming back every Friday morning or Thursday afternoon or night. And only had one kid at the time. And look, that was a big sacrifice for me, and certainly a sacrifice for my wife and young son Jack at the time. And but I had a great time doing it. I learned a lot, and I went in there and raised a bunch of money for those guys, and it was a really, really special place. Still is today, and they're still in business and doing well. I've always been obsessed with health and wellness, and I'm the crazy guy that wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and cold plunge and sauna and
Yep.
meditate. I
Yep.
still train like I'm a professional athlete because I think
Hmm.
I think being an entrepreneur is just like an athlete. You got to take care of your mental and physical wellness on an everyday basis, and the more I work out, the more I take care of myself, I think the better I am and the better I perform and the better dad I am, the better husband, the better friend, et cetera. And so, then Peels had an opportunity to partner with some young entrepreneurs to launch Peels, and went through that journey. I've gone through that journey for several years, and then again was in the right place at the right time to have an opportunity to put together a group to buy Fathead. And for me, it's just so fun, man, to be back in sports again. And like I said, leverage these relationships I built. It's an incredible brand. We have an incredible opportunity to really make an impact in culture and sports and entertainment and beyond. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I think for me, like I said, it's all about creating a special culture where you're empowering your teammates to do special things and be great. And it's just having a responsibility to really stay focused on what your execution plan is, and it's a lot more fun to do in
Yeah.
sports, and
Yeah.
I think sports are getting bigger and bigger. Fandom is getting bigger and bigger. Like I said earlier, seeing these valuations of sports teams, it's mind blowing, but sports are unbelievable, right? They're the best thing on earth. And I think for us to make an impact on the fan experience, to elevate the fan experience, to help teams elevate the fan experience has been really special. And we're making a big impact in youth sports. I think that's really the way to bring this brand back to cultural relevance, and starting to make big investments in technology and automation and AI. Uh, to really, take this business to the next level. We're expanding distribution, or, we have eventually have plans to go global. And so it's been awesome, man. We're having a good
Yeah.
time. It's a lot of hard work. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's hard work. I go to bed every night thinking about this brand. I wake up every day thinking about this brand, and trying to get better every day as a leader, and trying to empower my teammates to be great. And again, it's all about execution.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you talk about culture and teamwork and teammates. Like those are a lot of words that you are used in sports. And you say being an entrepreneur is just like being an athlete. That's something I'd like to touch on for sure. Like the athlete to executive, like the mindset shift. Like how does the mind shift of a pro athlete translate to being a CEO or an entrepreneur? And like are there habits or principles from your playing days that you apply in the boardroom or during meetings? And on the flip side, what do you have to unlearn from being an athlete?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, look, you got to work hard. You got to be committed to grind. And I think, yeah, grit is one of the first words that comes to mind. You got to be gritty. You got to have resilience. You got to make sacrifices. You got to be consistent day in and day out of waking up every day and trying to be better, trying to be a better leader, trying to be a better teammate, trying to be a better partner. Um, there's a lot of lessons I learned from being a pro athlete, which translate into the business world. And I think the biggest thing in sports and business is the most successful franchises, the most successful businesses have great cultures, and they hire the right people that fit into the culture of what you're trying to build. Making sure everybody believes in the vision, is aligned with the vision. For reflecting on my professional football career, I think about some of the organizations that we were successful and some we weren't. And I think a lot of it boiled down to culture. I think it's, in the business world, putting the best people in the best seats, and hiring the right people. And you hear the Mark Cuban saying, hire slow and fire fast. It's relevant to business. You
Mhm.
got to really making sure, especially with a brand like Fata and the opportunity we have, it's getting the right people in the right seats, hiring the right people, having the right execution plan. But it's for me, it's the same playbook, Andrew. It's working your butt off. It's waking up every day and getting better, learning from the mistakes you make or will make. And everybody's going to make mistakes. Like in the NFL, everybody's getting paid, man. Everybody's, strong and fast, and everybody watches film and understands tendencies, etc. And you have to have a short memory. I think golf's a good example. Like you're watching the Masters and seeing Rory McIlroy and going through adversity, but he was a pro, man. He had a short memory. You focus on the next shot, and
Yep.
that's what you do in business too, man. You're gonna have to take the bat off the shoulder and take risk, and it's got to be calculated risk, but you gotta be able to take risk and go after it and go big, and you got to do so in a very data-driven way, and in summary, I think a lot of the lessons I learned from being a pro athlete, having a chip on my shoulder every day, I still wake up with a chip on my shoulder. I still grind every day because I have to. It's all I know. And it's been fun, man. It's been a lot of hard work, like I said, but it's been fun. I think we have an incredible opportunity, but it's a job, man. And I have a fiduciary responsibility as a CEO and a leader. And when you raise money, you have investors, and I take that very serious. And you got to want to win, man. And you got to figure out the right ways to win.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that Masters Rory example, that's a great example. I know that can translate to teamwork too, because I know after he missed that putt, his caddy said something to him in
Yep.
his ear, gave him a little words of encouragement, definitely helped him on the next hole to win the thing. So that's definitely a great example. You talk about how important building, the right team and having the right culture is. So I mean, yeah, obviously you've led teams, at Yale as a captain and a quarterback, and in business as a CEO. What is your leadership style? For example, how did you approach building team culture at Resilience Code or Fathead? And are there any specific strategies like that you use to motivate or unite people towards a common goal?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, I've always taken the approach of lead by example, and it's fun. I have two
Mhm.
kids, 6 and 10, and it's been incredible to teach them the things that I wasn't taught as a young kid. And the biggest thing is leadership and how to be a leader. And what I tell my 10-year-old least is that, look, you don't have to be an overly vocal leader. You can lead by example. You control your attitude and your energy and your effort. You encourage your teammates when they make great plays. You pick your teammates up when they make mistakes. And that's what I try to do in business. I think for me, I've always taken a leadership style of leading by example and making sacrifices and grinding and working hard and being organized. I think the biggest thing in both sports and business is preparation. You hear that all the time, but it's just so important to be prepared. And you got to know your market, you got to know your customer, you got to know your opponents, and that's pretty consistent in sports and business. And so for me, I lead by example, but I'm also I try to be an inspirational leader. Uh, I try to be a great communicator, which I think is important as a leader. I try to be vulnerable and open to communicating in a way that makes people feel comfortable and they can come to you at any time. I think that's very important in business and sports. And that's it in a nutshell, man. I think being a leader, you can be a leader in a bunch of different ways. But for me, it's always been, one, lead by example, and then two, be a real inspirational leader. I think reflecting on my professional career, in honesty, some of the things I was disappointed in is that when you're a head coach or when you're a CEO, you have to know what motivates people, right? And some people take, and especially in the NFL, some old school coaches are screaming at people, and not everybody responds to that positively. So you have to know what it takes to motivate to get the best out of your players or get the best out of your employees or your partners. And a part of that is really kind of climbing above the situation and really understanding and learning what it takes from each individual to maximize their value in the company or their team, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. So you talked about leading a team. I just wanted to touch on how you're leading the initiative of fan engagement in the future at Fathead. So obviously, Fathead's, beloved brand among sports fans. Now that you're the CEO, you're at the helm, what is your vision for the evolution of Fathead? And I know you mentioned earlier fan engagement and technology, digital experiences. Can you just share what the future might look like for a fan interaction in the Fathead universe?
Yeah, I think for us in the short term, Andrew, there's so much low hanging fruit to this business. I think for us, it's maximizing the opportunity we have with these epic license partners. We have NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, NASCAR, WWE. We have a ton of entertainment IP and license partners. And so it's maximizing those relationships. It's growing those relationships. It's growing revenue. The second part is the custom side of our business. So our business is really broken up into two verticals. There's a licensed product. So you see, the life-size vinyl decals. We have minis, we have dry erase boards, we have cardboard standouts. You see the cheering products with the big heads, which you see people cheering their family or their heroes, athletes in the ballparks, arenas, stadiums, etc. Um, but also it's fathead yourself, right? It's capturing these moments that are happening every day in sports and entertainment and life and culture, right? Whether it's birthday parties or graduations or bar mitzvahs, or my son wins Little League championship, wants to capture that moment, or
Yeah.
my 6-year-old has an incredible like diving, flagpole and flag football. Like we have the opportunity to capture those moments, and that's really special to us. And I think that's a big growth lever of our business. The other thing is marketing, right? It's all marketing, and you got to do so in a very data driven, sophisticated manner. You got to understand who your customer is, the key personas and the key demographics of who your customers are. You got to figure out ways to reach those customers and talk to them in the right way. It's about content, it's about creative, and today's world's different, right? I think back in the day, Fathead did an incredible job of building a brand. They were everywhere, right? TV commercials, Super Bowl ads, ESPN commercials, and today's world it's a little different. It's about social and social selling and live selling and influencer partnerships and affiliate partnerships and getting these cast of characters in the market that have big reaches and that can highlight these incredible moments that Fata is capturing, and the incredible IP we have. And then, down the road, it's to your point, combining the physical and the digital, and these decals become portals to trigger content, and that's our idea of this fan engagement platform. There's a lot more information to come soon here. Um, but that's exciting for us. That's we've made significant investments in AI and automation, which makes our business a lot more sophisticated, a lot more efficient. The best companies have to do that. And for us, it's laying out our product innovation roadmap. What do we have? What kind of different products? What kind of license expansion opportunities, category expansion opportunities? We have a lot of them, but at the end of the day, it's focusing on our short-term goals and our short-term KPIs. And then it's like, all right, what is our 5-year roadmap? What does our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year roadmap look like? And what's the strategic plan to be able to execute those goals? Look, we got an incredible core team on some other A+ players here, and we're surrounding ourselves with some great investors and great partners, and we're going through the process, man. It's all about people, it's all about process, and it's all about focus and discipline. And there's no question we have an incredible opportunity at Fathead to really make an impact, like I said, in culture and sports and bring joy to people's lives. That's why, I was on the phone with an investor earlier, and he's like, "Why are you doing this, man? Like, your career's been all over the place." And I'm like, "I'm doing this because the look on my son's face when I got him a life-size Christian McCaffrey decal is just priceless. The
Yep.
look on my kids' all-star team when I presented them each with personalized custom decals of them, and they can share those decals with grandma and grandpa and
Hmm.
their brothers and sisters, or put them on the wall. And then all of a sudden down the road, when their decal, my son's decal triggers content, and we do a deal with a game changers of the world, and they can see their highlights and their stats, just like we can see Patrick Mahomes highlights and stats. That's why we're doing it, man. We we feel very grateful and fortunate to be in this position. And, we're going to wake up every day and grind and get better every day and maximize the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, growth and just how you can use your, new A team players and building, taking on people, growing as a team and building a better team. But, you know, growth, it often doesn't come without failure. Most people learn more from their failures than their wins. So can you just share a failure or a mistake in your post NFL career that taught you a valuable lesson, maybe a venture that didn't work out or a deal that fell through? How did you bounce back and what did you take away from it?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think for me personally, I've always had a massive fear of failure and I just hate to lose. But once I realized, look, there's a lot of access to great information out there. I've learned a lot from guys like Gary Vee and some of these other, serial entrepreneurs. Startups are very hard. It's very difficult. We know the stats of companies that do well and those that don't. And I think, look, I've had some failures in my life and I've used those as learning lessons. And you hear this in sports is don't try not to make the same mistake twice. And I think for me, I've been fortunate enough. It sucks at the time, believe me, because I hate losing and I hate failing. But I think, if you're smart enough to learn from those failures and use those lessons to be better in what you do and be smart enough to do your homework and do testing and research and surveys and all that good stuff, the chances are you're going to be successful. I think the value of Fathead, Andrew, is that we're now a 19-year-old brand and we have a great brand, and now it's all about how we market, how we sell, uh, the partners we align with to really grow. I think one of the things I'm most excited about, obviously, is youth sports and really making an impact in youth sports. And then I think our custom side of the business is very exciting. And then, look, like I said earlier, we have some great license partners. We want to grow those relationships. We want to collaborate in these tentpole events that are happening in sports every day or every season, whether it's a Super Bowl. We had a pretty big activation and a party at the Super Bowl this year, the last 2 years. It's NBA All-Star, it's March Madness, it's the draft. We're doing some big activations of the draft this year in Green Bay. So I think for me, it's overcoming that fear of failure was key in my life. It's learning from these mentors that I have in my life. I think one key takeaway from your listeners is that, I think everybody should have a mentor. Everybody needs coaching. I've gone into these businesses in the past somewhat cold and lucky I was smart enough to learn as much as I can and surround myself with people that are smarter than me and you're going to be successful if you do that. And I think mentors have had an incredible impact on my life and my career, and I still seek out mentors and every day. If I have a problem or I have a challenge, I have people I can call, and that's important, man. And being a CEO is lonely at times, right? There's a lot of responsibility and fiduciary responsibility, and you have bigger responsibility to figure it out. And I think the way to do that is to leverage all this amazing information online, and then reach out to people that have been through the same battles that you're going through or you will go through. And I think that's critical.
Yeah. Having a mentor to help you find your identity and your passion and give advice is important. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with. You've worn so many hats. It's just identity shifts. Like, did you ever struggle with who am I without football question? Or what advice would you give to athletes or people in their job who's facing a major career transition or going from athlete to business, what you did? How do they reinvent themselves in a successful manner?
Yeah, look, I think everybody goes through it. I played 11 years as we've talked about, and but again, I knew that I wasn't going to play forever. I think preparing from early on is really important. I think learning as much as you can, meeting as many people as you can, and surrounding yourself with mentors is crucial. And I think for me, it was important for me to go back to school and continue my education, as I enter the business world. I'd been out of school 11 going on 12 years. Going back to school was important to me to learn, one, and two, that was an incredible opportunity at Harvard and Wharton to meet some like-minded people, and some of those people I still talk to, some of the professors I still talk to, and those are very valuable relationships. And so I think for me, it's trying to figure out what my next passion is. What can I pour my heart and soul into, and take the things that made me successful in my professional football career and implement those same things into my business career. And I think, again, business is hard, Andrew, as you know, and it's you got to be passionate about what you're doing. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing and you don't wake up every day excited to get to work, it's hard. And so I think for young entrepreneurs or young athletes that are going through transitions, it's learning as much as you can, improving your IQ as much as you can, uh, getting mentors and surrounding yourself with mentors that have been through the grind. And then it's just it's be willing to make sacrifices. For me, I mentioned this in a post, and I'm very sincere. Like, I started as a rookie. I was a rookie in this hedge fund, and that's a humbling experience. But again, I was okay with it, and not many people are. But I knew, like, look, I got to come in here and prove my value. I got to work as hard as I possibly can. I got to learn as much as I possibly can, and I got to get better. Like, it's a bottom line business. Professional sports is a bottom line business. Working for a hedge fund, it's a bottom line business. You're either making money or you're not. You're either making plays or you're not. And so, I think for my advice to athletes that are going through this transition, whether it's you're transitioning from college to the real world, or you're transitioning from professional athletics to the real world, it's the same process, and it's a humbling process, and it's a tough process, but you have to embrace it, and you got to be willing to start from zero. And it's, like I said, it's humbling, but it's certainly necessary.
You talked about making relationships and meeting people, and obviously there's a famous line. It's not about who you know, it's about what you know. But I feel like a better way to say that it's not about who you know or what you know. It's about who will vouch for you. What do you think about that?
It is, and reflecting on my career at Evolution Capital, I was fortunate enough to have a leader that really believed in me and knew that he can count on me, and I'd be the guy that can go to Tokyo by myself and run this professional basketball team, or I can commute every week for 17 months to go run this health and wellness company in Denver. And that's important too. Like, we have a partnership with a group called Flexwork Sports, which is managing and operating these youth sports camps. And it's been so fun for us to be a part of that and to make an impact in these young kids' lives. And I think the lessons you learn from being at sports camps is valuable, man. You learn, to be a good teammate. You learn these to be coachable and to deal with adversity and be resilient and all that good stuff. So, and it's like, you got to have people that believe in you, man, but you got to earn that belief, and you got to earn that trust and respect. And I think for me, I've had some very valuable coaches in my life. Kevin Driscoll was my football coach at Avon All Farms in Connecticut, and look, he really believed in me, and building confidence is essential for being an athlete. And if you have someone that believes in you and trusts you and puts you in situations to succeed, that's invaluable. And so I think that's helped me out in my career, and you know in business and in football and any sport, it's understanding your role in the team and being good with that role, but always trying to get better at that role and progressing in your career, progressing and becoming from a backup to a starter, and
Hmm.
preparing to be a starter. And everybody should be looking to progress their career. And so for me, it's important as a leader because I had those people that believe in me. And so, I try to instill that belief in my teammates and my partners and stuff. And it's been cool, man. It's been great.
Yeah, and you talked about progressing your career and having that longevity, being excited and passionate about what you do every day, and having that energy And I feel like, and I know you're big on wellness guy and routine. So what wellness routines or mindset practices keep you at that high level? And do you have any non-negotiables or habits for physical, mental health that you swear by?
I have a lot of non-negotiables. I think for me, when that alarm goes off at 4:30, it's not an option for me. I'm getting up. And there's some days I don't feel like getting up. There's some days I don't feel like hopping in that cold plunge. It's 39, 40 degrees, but you know what? I made a decision to do it because I know it's what I need to do to be at my best. And like I said, I still train like a professional athlete and train like a meathead because that's my personality and that's what I know that makes me feel good. And I'm a big fan of stoicism. I'm a big fan of meditation. I think meditation has really changed my life in a positive way. My brother introduced me to meditation many years ago. Yoga's made a big impact in my life physically and mentally. Um, I still eat. I follow this diet, which I've followed since 2002, where I eat no carbs 6 days a week, and then Sunday, like I'm going to prison on Monday, donuts with my kids and pancakes and I try to live my life in a very disciplined way and it's important for me to see my have my kids see me taking care of myself and showing good examples to my kids and taking care of my body and taking care of my mental wellness and look, I played a grueling game for a long time and I need a knee replacement in my right knee. I'm bone on bone and I do everything I can to take care of that. I got some shoulder issues, some neck issues, and so it's important. I think for me, there's a lot of things that are non-negotiable because that works for me. And I think, some people get intimidated by that, and we're out to dinner, and I'm either not drinking or I'm eating clean, and it's okay. Like I think my mentality for people or my message to people is you got to live life, right? And
Yeah,
but you certainly have to make a lot more good decisions than bad. And
yeah.
some people call it the 80-20 rule. Um, I hopefully make a lot more good decisions than bad when it comes to my health and wellness and physical wellness and mental wellness. But I also have to live life. And I recently went on vacation and spring break with my kids in Mexico and lived a little, man. You got to live a little. You got to enjoy your life and but again, it's making a lot more good decisions than bad. And that's worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I just want to go into a little bit of a rapid fire question segment
Do it.
with you, just some quick questions and answers. So, who do you think is the toughest defender you ever had to block?
Oh, man, a lot of tough defenders. I think Levon Kirkland, a middle linebacker, my rookie year in the playoffs, beast. Reggie White, Bruce Smith, and Ray Lewis are kind of the top four that come to mind.
Awesome. What's your favorite memory from your NFL career?
My first play, I was playing kickoff return against the New York Jets. I was the up back, going to be in the wedge blocking for the returner, and the kicker shanked it a little bit. It came to me, and I returned it like 23 yards. I broke a tackle. I thought I was gone, and then I got blasted from the side. That was just my welcome to the NFL moment. And the next after halftime, I convinced Hank Coolman, who was a special team coach at the time, to I was only playing kickoff return. I had just gotten there, I think on Tuesday of that week, so he put me on a
Hmm.
kickoff return, and so I convinced him to put me off on kickoff team. I'm like, look, man, I won't embarrass you, and so he put me at the L2, and I went on and broke up the wedge and made the tackle, and so that was my first kind of welcome to the NFL, and kind of kicked off my career.
Awesome, awesome. I know you're a big golfer, +2 handicap. What is your dream foursome? So you and three others, dead or alive? Anyone?
Oh man, great question. I think, I always enjoy spending time with my family. I think my brother, my dad, and then one of my best friends. I think the cliche answer is the Michael Jordans of the world and stuff like that. For me,
Yeah.
golf, I grew up, my dad owned a driving range when I was a kid, so I grew up a driving range rat. Golf has always been a big part of my family. My dad owns a little nine hole. municipal golf course in Connecticut. My dad and I, my brother, have been on some special trips to Scotland and Ireland, and so my dad's in his 80s now, and so yeah, for sure, my dad, my brother, and then one of my close friends,
Nice. That's awesome.
or my
Okay.
son-in-law, my father-in-law, keeping the family.
Yeah, keeping the family for sure. What do you find more nerve-wracking? 4th and 1 on the goal line in front of 70,000 people, or a high-stakes business pitch to a boardroom of investors?
Depends if I'm getting the ball on 4th and 1 or not. um, I think they're equally as intense. I think you hear the saying, big players make big plays in big situations, and it's the same thing for me. It's preparing for those moments. And I think on 4th and 1, you got to prepare, you got to know the defense, you got to be able to execute your assignment. And I think it's the same thing for pitching investors. It's you gotta be prepared, you got to know your playbook inside and out, and you got to exude confidence. And I think it's the same playbook in both situations.
What's one habit from your playing days that you still use today in your daily routine as a CEO?
A lot of those things we talked about, man, health and wellness, I think is the key thing. Preparation is another one.
Yeah.
Those are the big things in my life.
You mentioned your cheat days on Sunday, right? So what's your big cheat meal? What's your favorite cheat meal?
Man, I love pancakes. I love
Pancakes.
healthy donuts, if there's such a thing, gluten-free donuts. I love pasta. We have this tradition in my family where we eat lasagna on all the major holidays. And so
Huh?
that was a big transition when I married my wife and started to go to her house for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like, I don't care if we have turkey and stuff and like we're still making lasagna. That was always a big part of our family routine. But yeah, I think, it's donuts, it's pancake, it's pizza. I love ice cream. Um,
Uh-huh.
I only eat them once a week, but when I do,
Yeah.
I love it.
What is a book or a podcast documentary that's inspired you?
I think for me, it's the Daily Stoic. I think, I'm very religious about waking up every day and reading my Daily Stoic. I think I've learned a lot of valuable lessons about life. I'm one of those guys that always tries to get better and read these self-help books or business books. My wife busts my chops sometimes, and
Yeah.
generally don't read for pleasure. I just read to try to get better.
Yeah.
But I think stoicism, like I said, has made a big impact in my life. And I think, look, whether you're in sports or in business, I think the main point is worry about what you can control and don't stress about the things you can't control. And if you can do that and have the awareness to do that, I think you're off to a good start.
Yeah. Who is on your personal Mount Rushmore of mentors or heroes?
My dad, my brother, uh, Michael Lurch, who is my boss and a dear friend today.
Hmm.
Like I said, had a tremendous impact and a tremendous amount of trust in me to put me in some key positions. And yeah, that's my top. I got some incredible resources in my life. Scott McGregor's of the world, who has taught me so much about communication and gifting and being thoughtful. Uh, and then I have some other friends that just have taught me valuable lessons in my life. But those are kind of my Mount Rushmore for sure.
Who is the biggest character or funniest teammate you ever played with?
Oh man, so many funny teammates. Kevin Green was an incredible teammate, really funny. Uh, God, so many characters. Too many to list, but in the NFL, it's an amazing experience, man. You have these individuals that come from all different backgrounds and different socioeconomic situations, and it's a perfect example of really coming together and embracing those different personalities and styles, etc. But I miss those days, man. I miss some of the things I miss the most are just the times in the locker room messing around or making, getting on the plane for away trips and playing cards and joking around.
Hmm.
Just that camaraderie. And I think the second thing I miss the most is the adrenaline of coming out of that tunnel, man. And
Hmm.
whether you're coming out in Green Bay or now Vegas, which used to be Oakland, or
Hmm.
you name it, you can't replace that feeling. And I think a lot of guys struggle with that. Can't replace that feeling in a boardroom or in a finance meeting or stuff like that, and that's okay. And you just embrace those feelings and those memories. And but I miss them, and I try to replace them in other ways for sure.
You talked about the adrenaline coming out of the tunnel. What tunnel or what stadium was the best one to play in or your favorite?
Green Bay was just a whole nother experience. I think the fans are just so amazing. It's all about football. I played for the Raiders for 2 years, and man, I used to hate playing against the Raiders. The fans are just ruthless. But when you play for the Raiders, it's the best experience ever. They're the most loyal fans. Uh, there's a lot of great stadiums out there. I think Philly is a very tough atmosphere to play in. The fans are very
Hmm.
passionate and borderline crazy. Um, but looking back in my career, I think Green Bay was probably the best true football experience I had as a visitor.
Hmm. What's the first car you ever owned?
I owned a 1986 Dodge Lancer.
That's
Amazing.
awesome.
It was my dad's company car that became my car at 16.
Who hits harder, NFL linebackers or the business world?
NFL linebackers. Depends how you define hit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
If Fathead could partner with any brand or athlete in the world, what would be the dream collab?
Oh, good question. I think for us, we're very heavily involved in youth sports. I think unrivaled sports would be fun.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the Draft Kings of the world, I know those guys well, really respect what they're doing. Peyton Manning was a teammate of mine in Indy, and we are, working with and partnering with Omaha Productions. That's been a dream scenario for us. So I think those are some of the highlights.
Yeah, one more of these. If you were a movie, if there was a movie about you, who's playing you?
Oh, man. I get accused of being John Cena a lot. It's amazing. I'm in the airport or I'm in,
Really?
restaurants. And I was just in Mexico and these little kids like, oh man, it's John Cena. So I definitely say John Cena.
Okay, cool. And then I just got one more final question to wrap it up. So, looking ahead, you've achieved success in so many fields. When you look to the future, what's next on the bucket list? Big goals. It could be personal, professional. What's still on the horizon that you're excited about? And then what advice would you give to 21-year-old, Chris Hetherington at this moment in time?
For me, I'm just so dialed in with Fathead. I think for me, it's maximizing the opportunity of Fathead. Outside of work and business, it's trying to really relish these moments I have with my kids. My kids are 6 and 10, and so just being a big part of their lives and cheering them on and trying to steer them in the right direction, trying to be the best husband I can be, and making sure my life is fulfilled. And I've had some good experiences in my life and had some special moments in my life. And I'm 52. I got a lot of life ahead of me, and I got young kids, and so having that energy. But for me, and like I said, Andrew, several times, we got an incredible opportunity at Fathead. So I just want to maximize that opportunity and do everything I can to really take this brand to where I know it can be. And then it's just being the best parent, the best husband I can be, and spending time with family and friends. Trying to golf a little more. I don't have much time to play golf anymore, which is tough. I'd love to be able to free up to play a little more G in my life. Sorry to cut you off. 21-year-old self, I'd say, yeah, I would say just make the commitment to learn as much as you possibly can. Surround yourself with the best people possible. I think you hear that all the time, man, but it's so true. You're a product of who you surround yourself with, and you got to start doing that at a young age. You got to surround yourself with the people that inspire you, and people that are rooting for your success, that have your success, authentically and top of mind. And I think certainly that's what I tell my 21-year-old self.
That's great advice. I think that a lot of 21-year-olds watching could take that and use that for a positive sentiment. And just wrapping it up, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of good insights. I love talking to people. Love talking to you. Love talking to Rob in the last episode. This has been awesome. Just love asking questions and getting to know new people and sharing their story so other people can benefit and hear it. And yeah, thank you so much, Chris.
been a real pleasure, man. Andrew, really proud of you for the platform you're building and the content you're putting out there. So keep it rolling, man. Really proud of you.
Yeah, and then how can people, get to you and how can people get to Fathead?
Yeah, so we're on all the social channels. We're on LinkedIn. We're on social media, Fathead. We're on X, Facebook, obviously, fathead.com. So go on and order your special products. Me personally, I'm on Instagram, chead44. I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, reach out. Let's collaborate. Let's grow together.
Yeah, awesome. Let's grow. For us, it's Sports Business Unplugged everywhere. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. This has been an awesome episode. You can follow my LinkedIn at Andrew Sachs too. And yeah, definitely watch this, watch our clips, and thank you so much. Had a great time.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon, man. Thank you.
Thank you.